What's going on? My name is Joe, and I practice talking on the internet, and we have a formal video today. Whoa, fancy how that works. I haven't done a formal video in a while. Basically, just to kind of elicit people in the format of how I do these things, I tend to just have thoughts about something and then hit record, because I know if I keep these thoughts to myself, they're just going to get lost in the ether of my day-to-day. So the channel for the longest time was a vehicle of just airing thoughts out that I have. I don't really prepare scripts for these. I don't prepare anything for these. They're just kind of thoughts of how I'm just going about. And my old setup was set in such a way where I can just sit, hit record, and be done with it. As you can see in previous videos, or people have been watching my content for a little bit, I moved. So for the past year and a half now at this point, I've been in a different location. So it's been a challenge in order to physically set up equipment and hit record, because my space doesn't really allow for there to be multi facets to it. So I have to do one or the other. I have to live and work, or I have to stream content. So in the times that I'm off, I'm going to try to the best of my ability to make something a little bit more formal and intentional, insofar as I'm just going to hey, if there's some things that have been on my mind over the past couple days or weeks, depending on how my work schedule allows, I'll hit record and I'll talk about it. And that's what I'm doing right now. So I am a little worried and annoyed at how every election cycle feels like the end of times, where if you don't do X or Y, then the entire what we know as America is going to completely collapse. I've never really thought that to be the case. I think in practical terms, that's not necessarily the case, but I have to look at this in the context of I'm in a state that can't necessarily be rattled with in ways that other states can. I live in New Jersey. We are a deep blue state. We have a trifecta, which means the Democrats have a bottom up of control. And Republicans, for that sort of the impact of that is that they're not really exactly politically relevant at all. The governorship, the past election cycle, got people a little bit nervous because it was closer than it should be. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And maybe if I have some time and energy, I'll dedicate a whole thing of how does Jack Ciattarelli get the support and votes that he got, considering we're in a trifecta. But maybe that's another day. Today, I want to talk a little bit about how I'm thinking about this election cycle and what I'm looking to do with my energy long term, because I guess people are confused as to why I'm voting green. This has been a reoccurring thing in my current panel appearances and going on for conversations, where just by virtue of me voting green, I'm essentially co-signing. It's been a lot of weird things. I'm co-signing Putin. I'm co-signing Hitler. I'm okay with Donald Trump winning. It's all these types of weird arguments. And people are more than welcome to have them. And sometimes, based upon how they view the world, I can understand where they come to that conclusion. But I kind of just want to make my position a little bit more clear, and then we'll get out of the way, right? So I do not think that Democrats at the federal level in particular are going to exactly be this giant vehicle for change that they keep sort of advertising themselves to be. I do believe that change and actual material wins comes locally through local elections. So that's from your county commissioners to your city managers, all the way up to your governor. And the Murphy administration is an example of that. Even though I have problems with the Murphy administration as well, I think by and large, they've been a net good for New Jersey politics, especially coming out of the overt fascist that was Chris Christie. So, and it was telling. It's very telling how shitty a politician is when they run on a GOP ticket. Even Republicans are like, you don't want this. So that's always fun to see. That being said, I live in a deep blue state. So that means practically deep blue. I'm defining as any state where the difference between one party and another is on average about 20 percentage points when it comes to their elections, right? And there's about, on the blue side, I think it's like 16 or 18 states that are like that. Other ones that come to mind for me are Maryland, Maine, Hawaii, Washington, Colorado, kind of on average on that. California, especially Connecticut, especially Vermont. I don't know if I said Vermont already. Washington, D.C., areas like that where there's a significant, in this case, significant is an average about 20, where one party just has a bulldozes elections. That is Democrats in my state. Because of that, I believe that I'm able to approach electoralism, and I'm saying electoralism is all of the activities and competition that encapsulates voting. I can approach this a little bit differently. And because of a lot of things that the Democrats currently have on their plate, but especially what's going on in the Middle East and Gaza, I cannot vote for them. I can't vote for Republicans either. Let's get something out of the way quick, right? Like, Republicans are an absolute no-go. They're an overt, just all the mean words. They're an overt racist, fascist party that has no interest in change, and their desire to be in opposition of the Democrats directly harms people in my immediate life and those around me and those that I care about. So they're an absolute no-go. Republicans have shown in all their actions that they are a no-go, and probably a no-go forever. There is obviously a point where Republicans could have been what we believe to be left or progressive in America. But basically they kind of had two choices, right? You either become the vehicle of change for those who need it the most, or go absolutely batshit crazy. And if Dixiecrats taught us anything, Republicans decided to, in the face of Dixiecrat Democrats and pro-segregation Democrats, just to go batshit crazy. I don't know how, there's probably really good books as to the how and why that happened, but we're not in the timeline where Republicans are the vehicle for change. So they're a no-go. So we got to kind of rely on Democrats in this stage of the game. I do not think in their current state or their current manifestation that they're able to bring about change at the federal level. So when I look at federal elections, I'm just not, I'm good. So in the face of this current moment of me being, I'm good, what do I do? What do I do? So my solution to my own personal problem here is looking into other options at the federal level. And the only option at the federal level available to me in a very clear and substantive way is, in fact, the Green Party. The Green Party has folks running not only for the Senate, but also the House. And based upon their platforms are fine. They are fine. They are substantive to what I believe and what I want. So I'm kind of not forced in a negative connotation. We're just forced to look at them objectively. And I have a lot of criticisms. But my goal isn't to drag Greens. We have Democrats to do that for us. But I do think that me, as somebody who is looking at the Green Party and going, well, okay, let's see what you got, friend. There are some things that I'm kind of looking at for them. I think that for me in this current moment, it's totally fine for my calculus, based upon what their party platform is. I read it based upon how their party platform differs from the DNC party platform, both platforms of which I read. Green just resonates more to me than Democrats by far. And I'm like, all right, I'm now a officially registered independent. So I am more than happy to look to see what this party has to offer when it comes to the candidates that they bring forth and then the politics that come behind that. Obviously, there's the problems that everybody brings up as the problems of the Green Party. I am in agreement with most of those criticisms. I think for me, the game is, and I brought this up on Twitter not too long ago, that I want to use my political energy in this particular moment in my life and political life to stand 2 feet solely on the Green Party. And that's just in this current state of affairs. Now, the long term for me, because I have demands, is I want to see the Green Party giving a shit. Like, I want to see what they can do for folks in a situation like we are in New Jersey, where we're seeing the challenge of the party line, essentially what's known as the county line. I don't want to get too much in that, but the long and short of it, our ballots are structured in a way that's different than a vast majority, if not all, the other states in the United States. So our elections are kind of rigged in a very overt way. And the party line removal, or I guess the stay, for Democrats led to some interesting things. I think if not for the removal of the party line, the uncommitted movement in New Jersey was cooked. But we were able to net 2 delegates through the efforts in tandem with not only the efforts of the uncommitted movement broadly through Uncommitted NJ and a bunch of other organizations, but then also the active political advocacy and action that Democrats did within their own party, particularly through Andy Kim, in order to at least make the Democrat primary a more democratic process. So hats off to Andy Kim for that. Too bad he is not a good candidate. So I voted for Larry Hamm instead. So my ticket was uncommitted for the general, and then Larry Hamm for Senate, and a bunch of other stuff that I want to get into. But those are like the 2 big ones for me, and that confused a lot of people because it's not. I'm not in the position where I would never support Democrats under any stretch of the imagination. I've mentioned time and time again that I'm very much like positive, if not neutral, to what Democrats in New Jersey bring forth. There are a lot of shitty ones, but the ones that I managed to find myself within my district are, generally speaking, not completely terrible. However, I am open to new things. So one of the things I think is necessary with that is using my vote to help legitimize the third party within the goal that I'm describing. Like, I want to see, with my vote towards the Green Party making a conscious effort towards legitimizing themselves. And one of those forms of legitimization is going to be 5% on the general ballot. I think it's an important short-term goal to, let's work to get 5% in the state so they're able to give 5%. So like we're talking, and again, this is the 5% in the states that not only the Green Party is an approved state party, but also they have ballot access. So that is your Delaware's, your Connecticut's, your Hawaii's, your New Jersey's, your New York's, your Vermont. Maybe not Vermont. I don't know if Vermont has a state approved party, but I know Massachusetts does, Maine does. There's a handful of them. Like, of the 18 or so where Greens are on, in the 18 or so that there are solid blue states, there's about 14 or 15 that not only are a state approved party, but are also on the ballot. So they have access and they're state approved, which means they're legitimate. Like, you can be a registered Green Party member in the state of New Jersey. The problem with that is, among many other things, which will be a logistical thing that I'd probably have to ask a county clerk on, which is why I'm staying independent for the time being. What happens when you have local initiatives on primary ballots? Because the bylaws or state law basically says if you are registered, basically if you're not a registered Democrat or Republican, you cannot vote in primaries. So I don't know how that works when it comes to things like local ballot initiatives and stuff like that. I'm sure there is some clerk in my DMs or my Twitter followers or wherever would gladly contextualize what that means for me. But in the current moment, I am staying independent. I'm not registering as green. I am simply voting as green in this current election for the hope of them to be legitimized within the state of New Jersey. Now, I have one small part in that long-term goal, but I do think that it's one in the current moment of New Jersey politics and how New Jersey politics relates to federal. It's a risk and a endeavor that I'm worth taking. So the time limit that I gave the Green Party is about 12 years, essentially. 2 generals and 2 primaries to give him the ability for that. It might even be more closer to like 10. So 2 presidentials and 2 primaries, I believe, would be 10. But essentially 10 to 12 years is kind of my current willingness to engage in this hope. I think that's a good chunk of time to give somebody the ability to, and for what's that episode of Rick and Morty, show me what you got. So that's kind of where I am at this current point. Obviously that can change for a bunch of reasons. But me, as of middle September of 2024, that's currently where I'm at. I do think that one thing that kind of frustrates me is people like to inject things that aren't on the ballot. Like, for example, I'm not swayed at this idea that democracy's on the ballot, abortion's on the ballot, civil rights is on the ballot, the women's right to choose. And that's not how ballots work. So I have to look at the candidates and then the things that they say and do as it relates to the things that they believe that they say and care about. That's where we're at. So, and that's how I look at this. And currently, when it comes to the federal election, we're talking about president in particular, and then to a lesser extent, Senate and House of Representatives, because that part's a little bit more boring and a bit more nuanced I don't want to get into right now. But when I look at what Kamala Harris has to offer, it's just not it. Just not it. And obviously there's certain non-negotiables I have, and she has not met any of my non-negotiables. And I will admit, right, there is something to say about those who are going to be underneath her. I think she's very policy empty. So I think that's very possible that you could have folks that are more progressive than her, which is not really a bar that's that hard to cross, that you'll get sort of hopefully decent individuals through her lack of articulation of policy clearly. So the fact that she's purposely vague might allow for people to have to make the arguments for her, which might lead to some good things down the line. But that does not mean I'm going to vote for her. So that's if she wins, I'm going to just, sit and watch and see what happens. But in the current moment, I think establishing Greens as a legitimate party in New Jersey, through the voting of their candidates is a good play for me right now. And the eyes are then now for me on the Greens, where it's look, I voted for your white lady. I voted for your whole coalition of white people. They got to figure that out, because not a lot of white people in the Greens, as you just look at it from. So not a lot of non-white people as you look at the Greens objectively. A lot of white folks. So I don't know. Maybe they need a couple DEI officers. I'm I'm half joking there, but there are a lot of white people. But what's that to say? Like, saying that there's a lot of white people in a movement is like saying there's food at a grocery store. Like, of course there's going to be. So it's not really saying much of anything is new or profound. Anyway, I digress. That's where I'm at in this current moment. Again, just to be a little bit more clear, I think that the Green Party should use their political power, especially in states like mine, where they don't have to deal with too much of duopoly bullshit, to build power and legitimacy through local elections. At the very bottom, all the way to things like the governorship. And there's a lot of different benefits that come to polling well within the governorship as well. Because it'll be cool to see that the Green Party is just something that exists on the ballot and has a candidate on the ballot, like, as a default, where you don't have to like campaign or petition for it, that type of thing. So I'm down to work towards that goal with the Green Party for their legitimization. However, I am not exactly. I am watching them. I don't want to say I'm not exactly sure because I had nothing after that, but I'm just watching them where it's like, look, you know, I'm doing my part, what I believe to be the part in this context. What do you got? So that's a them problem. So the rest of this is like, hey, I'll do the vote part and do the help part where I can, in terms of like, hey, we need help doing, like, I'm down to do that, the organizational aspect of this. But that, again, like that, the Canada part's your problem. You have to figure that out. That's kind of where I'm at, where it's like, I want to see the Green Party use their political power in a state where they're deep blue like mine to build power and legitimacy through local elections. Based on all the language that I've heard from Green Party members, that seems to be the goal in New Jersey. So you got me. So let's get it. Let's get to work. But I have a timeline, and my timeline is about 10 to 12 years. So like, something is only good if it wins. So this was only a good endeavor if we see clear victories down the line. And if we don't, then it was not a good use of time. So, but I'm willing to go at this cliff and jump off it and see what goes with it. And if I come out wrong, then cool. I'll be what? 44, 45 at the end of this. I can't do math. I clearly went to school for music, but I'll be pretty young still, in the long scheme of politics and stuff like that. So in terms of politics, 40 is young as shit. So I'm glad to be in my mid 40s and say, hey, you know, riding with the Greens in the time that I did was not necessarily an advantageous thing. Then so be it. I think it's a little bit different in my risk now than those who took that risk during like the Nader days. Because obviously a lot has changed technologically that could lead to me wanting to do this now. That's totally different than how people made that calculus back then. Like, I totally understand if you came from the Nader days, of like the early thousands Greens, and you look at it now and go, I'm out, then I totally understand that. But yeah, I'm willing to jump down this now. And I have a lot of thoughts on Cornel West on this, but that's a totally different video and conversation. I think that we would probably have a different sentiment of the Greens if Jill Stein did not put her hat in the ring. Although, not to get too deep in that video, because that's a thought that's been on my mind, I understand why she came to that conclusion to run. So I'm not going to fault her for that. I think Cornel West kind of screwed them over. So, and they kind of needed somebody quick. And Jill was that. Quick and expedient. But that's a thing for another day. With that being said, that's all I got for now. Hopefully this was entertaining. But yeah, either way, I'll be still on Twitch and Twitter arguing with people on the internet. But if you have any questions or want to see anything else about me or just want to talk to me, as you can see now, like, all my socials have been floating throughout this video. So feel free to reach out and we can make something happen. All right. Take care.